No, that.
Are we good? We are on. Look at that. Okay, we good? Hi, everybody. Thank you. Welcome. And here we go. We are starting another round of information relative to the Baylands. And this is our March 4th, 2020 scoping meeting. I'd like to thank you for attending tonight's Environmental Impact Report scoping meeting for the proposed Baylands specific plan. The project applicant, UPC, is preparing the draft specific plan, which must be consistent with the voter-approved measure, JJ. It can't be deviated. It has to be exactly what we voted on. Commencing the EIR is an important milestone for this Baylands project. The city is preparing the EIR and wants to hear your opinion on what environmental issues should be studied in the forthcoming environmental documents. These are very important to everything we do moving forward. So thanks again for participating. We really appreciate it. Love seeing a room full of people. Normally we have a city council meeting and there might be one or two people sitting in the audience. So we're really happy to see you here. Thank you so much. Now I would like to throw Lloyd under the bus. No, just kidding. I'd like to introduce Lloyd Zola, the city's environmental consultant, who will conduct tonight's scoping meeting. Lloyd, thank you so much.
Thank you. So you had so much fun with EIR last time, we thought we'd do it one more time. Yes. Scoping meeting is a very specific requirement under the law, and it is defined as it's an opportunity to provide comments regarding what should go into the environmental impact report. It's the beginning of the process. So we are just starting to prepare environmental studies, to look at what kinds of studies ought to be done. And I'll describe the process, but now we're going to be talking about what kinds of studies ought to be done, and then the public will have the opportunity to review the environmental studies after they're done, prior to actually having public hearings on the project itself. Now, the purpose of tonight's meeting, as I said, is to take comments on the environmental issues that you, the public, believe need to be addressed in the environmental impact report that will be prepared. This is not a hearing on the project, and so what we would ask tonight is you focus those comments on environmental issues rather than pro and cons of, and I'll describe what the project is. Well, the comments we get tonight will then review along with city staff, and then we will undertake the actual environmental studies. The comments tonight and tonight's meeting is being recorded, and a tape of tonight will actually be part of the environmental record for the Baylands specific plan project. So kind of set this up to those who desire to speak in about 5 minutes each, and we'll ask that you fill out a speaker card, because we do need to keep track of who spoke, because that becomes part of the public record. You also have out front, along with an agenda, there's a form on the back. If you would prefer giving written comments as opposed to verbal comments, you can do that either tonight or any time through March 20th. Provide written comments on the scope and content of the environmental impact report. Now, I'll do a quick background of how we got to the point of doing this new environmental impact report. Back in 2018, the city council adopted a general plan amendment for the Baylands, which then was also approved as Measure JJ, permitting 18 to 2,200 dwelling units, 6.5 million square feet of commercial use, and another 500,000 square feet of hotel use on the Baylands. So that is what is approved in the city's general plan. The amendment also set a set of rules for the specific plan now being prepared by the applicant as part of their proposed development of the site. For a specific plan, site remediation, water supply, implementing a sustainability program, and then some basic rules for the phasing of the project, protection of habitat, and stabilizing and restoring and then reusing the roundhouse. This is all part of General Plan Amendment 118, Measure JJ, and all those rules can be found on the city's website, and the detail of what the specific plan that is being prepared will need to address. Along with that approval of that General Plan Amendment was a programmatic analysis that the City Council determined the previous environmental impact report was adequate for the approval of a General Plan Amendment. The basic city's rules for development, essentially the Constitution for development, and the environmental impact report that was certified by the City Council was certified for use in adopting that General Plan Amendment. Now, what is being proposed today? As Mayor Pro Tem identified, the specific plan that is being prepared is to be consistent with the city's general plan. So when the city adopted the General Plan Amendment, there was also at the time a proposed specific plan that laid out all the rules for development and the detailed rules for development. The council did not take action on that specific plan, and it allowed the applicant to bring back a proposal consistent with the General Plan Amendment that was approved. And so you'll see the land use that's being proposed is consistent with the General Plan Amendment. And all of these details are included in the notice of preparation that was out front, that was sent out. 3 different types of residential uses, 3 different types of commercial uses, and an elementary school. And you will see that map in your notice of preparation. Now, what we're going to focus on is the CEQA process for analyzing this. I mentioned that an environmental impact report was done before. A new environmental impact report is going to be prepared. And what that environmental impact report does is it will analyze what are all the physical environmental changes that would occur if the City Council would ultimately approve the development proposal. It will identify how significant they are, how large, how big the change is, and then require mitigation measures to reduce the physical environmental impacts of that project as it's now being proposed. It's a new EIR for 3 basic reasons. One is the project as it will now be proposed is substantially different than the environmental impact report you as a community looked at back in 2013 to 2014. It is different because the project is different. Before we analyzed 4,400 units and various alternatives. Now it is analyzing the development proposal by the applicant. The circumstances have changed. CEQA guidelines today, CEQA California Environmental Quality Act. So the basic law governing preparation and what kinds of environmental impacts and how do we address them are different today than they were 6 years ago when the original EIR was done, and there's new information available that has come about in those 6 years. So it's going to be a new environmental impact report. As I mentioned, the notice of preparation starts the process. It started on February 20th with the notice that said the city is going to prepare an environmental impact report, and we are requesting input on what ought to be in that report. Through March 20th, the city will be taking comments on what kinds of studies you believe ought to be done. Now, one of the reasons that the notice of preparation was put out early in the process, and as an environmental consultant, I always want it early in the process, even before an applicant necessarily might have his entire specific plan done. One is this 30-day period sets the environmental baseline. And what that means is, as we analyze what are the impacts of the project, we analyze how will development as proposed by the applicant change conditions as they exist now. And so it was important, in particular, for analyzing biological resources to establish a baseline that was a spring baseline rather than a summer baseline. And we also have historical records as well as reconnaissance surveys from spring last year following a much wetter winter. It's also important to start the public discussion of what kinds of studies ought to be done, what kinds of analyses the public believes need to be done, what kinds of environmental concerns the public might have. I like having that as part of the public record before the applicant has this whole project ready, because we can talk to them about these are the kinds of things we need to analyze, here's the information we need from you, and you need to be thinking about certain things as you put your project together. So that is the reason this notice of preparation of the meeting tonight is out ahead of the actual specific plan. The next step is to prepare a draft EIR. A draft EIR is the document that will go out for public review that identifies these are the changes that the applicant's project will make to the physical environment. That will go out for a public review period. After the close of the public review period, the city is required to respond to all comments that are received and prepare written comments to all the, or written responses to all the comments, and put together with the draft EIR, revisions to the draft EIR becomes the final EIR. And only after that draft EIR goes out, there's public review of it, we have your comments, agency comments, the city has responded to those comments, then and only then is what's called a final EIR put together so that the city council, planning commission and city council could actually hold public hearings. So there's a long environmental process that will precede actual review of an approval or not approval or modifications. The issues to be addressed in the EIR, basically every issue and I'll identify 3 exceptions that are in the CEQA guidelines. And the CEQA guidelines today are slightly different than they were when the previous EIR went out for review. So we will be following the 2019 revisions in the guidelines, and there are actually 2020 guidelines, but we'll be looking at those major revisions that have occurred to the California Environmental Quality Act and the organization of the document and the thresholds of significance and the issues to be addressed. There are 3 things that we did look at, and that list is also in your notice of preparation that was up at the front. There's 3 issues we will not be discussing in any level of detail. We will identify why these 3 issues are not necessarily, or not significant. Agriculture, mineral resources, wildland fire hazards. Yes, there have been some some very severe wildland fires in Northern California. The Baylands is more of a developed site, and so we had initially said that that would not be one of the detailed sets of issues. There will be analysis of fire services that is part of the EIR, though. The EIR, the Environmental Impact Report, will also look at alternatives. So once we've identified these are the impacts of what is proposed, what changes might be made to the project, what alternatives are to the project to reduce its environmental effects. We will look at the cumulative effects. So we'll look at the effects of proposed Baylands development in combination with past, present, and probable future projects. So what are all the other projects we know going on in the surrounding area, larger projects in the Bay Area, and looking at how do all of these fit together and what do they mean when you put them all together. And then we'll look at growth-inducing effects. And growth-inducing effects basically means by building infrastructure, water systems, sewer systems, transportation systems, will this development spur additional development beyond just what's being proposed in this one project? There will be, as I said, a number of opportunities for public comment, public comments following tonight on what kinds of studies ought to be done, response to the notice of preparation, either on the back of your agendas, you can hand them in tonight, send them back to the city by March 20th. When the draft EIR environmental impact report goes out, another set of comments and another opportunity for that. And then there will be opportunities for comments on the development proposal itself, kind of at the end of the public review or the end of the CEQA environmental review process, planning commission hearings and city council hearings. And so with that, thank you for staying with me through the presentation. Any written comments that you have on the notice of preparation should be submitted by March 20th. And then I do have people who signed in, and so we'd be looking for any comments you might have about input to the form. So,
and if anybody who likes to speak has not filled out the sign-in sheet that was in the lobby, I think Jeremiah can pass that around. So if anybody who wants to speak who didn't sign up, please do so we can have a record of who spoke today. So with that, I'll let Lloyd start with the people who are already on the list.
And
I had a question.
well, you're also first on the list, so if you want.
I wasn't necessarily going to speak.
Okay.
I did have a question.
Do we need to have her go up?
Get to the microphone.
Yeah, so because we are recording this, so.
Michelle Salmon, I had a question, Lloyd. When you said that there was 3 reasons, I thought you said there were 3 reasons,
Yes.
but I only heard you speak to 2 of them. Did I miss the third? One was project as now proposed is substantially different than the EIR. The second was CEQA guidelines have changed since the original EIR in 2019. And the third was?
A whole lot of new information.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot more information to be incorporated in this document. Yeah, so those are the 3 major reasons we're doing a new EIR. Did you have anything else? Okay. Anthony Chen? No? Okay. Anthony Walker? Oh, I see. Okay. I'm not looking all the way over to the right. The little check box is great. Thank you, Anthony Walker. I'm just reading names.
Hi, Anthony Walker. So, I mean, I think just generally broad strokes, the things that I was most concerned about were making sure that the city is able to stay in line with its greenhouse gas emissions targets, and you know, this thing is potentially 25 years in the future, right? So that gets us up to 2045, right? They're talking about, you know, needing to totally decarbonize the economy by 2050. It's only 5 years off, right? So we've got to put a lot of advanced planning into that. I would think also making ensuring the safety of anybody that's you know, living or working out there. I think the remediation is a concern, and you know, related to global warming issues. You know, I keep thinking, well, has sea level rise been properly thought through, right? If there's even you know, an inch of standing water a month out of the year, that's a big deal, right? So looking into those 3 things, I think from my vantage point, just want to make sure those are addressed.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Michael Barnes?
Good evening, Michael Barnes. I'm a Brisbane resident. There is no specific plan for this EIR. The most recent Baylands planning documents that conform to the laws governing Baylands development are 1, the program level EIR certified by the City Council in 2018, and 2, the program level General Plan Amendment 1-18, also approved by the City Council in 2018. The ability to make comments related to the project are constrained by the process adopted. That is, this scoping session and EI environmental impact study on a non-existent specific plan and non-existent specific plan alternatives. I offer my comments to the notice of preparation with the expectation that both the city and the developer are receptive to citizen involvement and will incorporate these comments in the eventual specific plan and in the current environmental impact study. 1, the specific plan should include a north-south and east-west bicycle paths that are Class 1, physically separated from motor vehicles, not just Class 2 bike lanes in roadways shared with automotive traffic. Bike paths separated from motor vehicle traffic measurably increase the use of bicycles. The EIR should address 1, what increase in bicycle use can be expected from a Class 1 bicycle network versus Class 2 or Class 3 network. 2, how a Class 1 bicycle network will impact traffic congestion and vehicle miles traveled. 3, how a Class 1 bicycle network will impact air quality, including greenhouse gases. And 4, the safety difference between the protected Class 1 versus Class 2 and 3 bicycle routes. Second is the specific plan should include a mountain bike or cyclocross bicycle circuit from atop Icehouse Hill to the Bay Trail, connecting over the Tunnel Bridge and through Lagoon Park. The EIR should address cycling's environmental impacts in the restorative open space areas and the potential for habitat restoration and trail maintenance from within the cycling community. And for instance, San Francisco urban riders, mountain bikers of Santa Cruz, and the stewards of the Sequoia. 3, the impact of new Baylands residents and employees on existing dirt trails serving Brisbane, such as Old Ranch Road, San Bruno Mountains State Park, Brisbane-owned land in the Acres, Crocker Industrial Park Trail, Candlestick Point, and McLaren Park, should be studied, and how construction of dirt trails on the Baylands might mitigate these impacts on existing recreational trails. 4, the project boundary should be adjusted to include the Bay Trail and mountain bike path along US 101. If this is not legal, then the eastern boundary of the project should contain the Bay Trail and mountain bike path, meaning the 3-lane Sierra Point extension will need to move westward. 5, a BMX pump track should be included in one of the restorative open space areas and studied in the environmental impact study for environmental impacts. 6, any shuttle system should include service to the 3rd Street Light Rail, and associated traffic impacts should be studied in the EIR. I'm excited about the Oakdale water transfer and suggest that our local politicians should be working on our state to provide for transfer of the water. If the state wants us to build housing, the state must facilitate water transfer. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Anyone else want? Oh, I'm sorry, there is one more. Alec? Great, right there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex Splendorio. Originally, I came here interested for just the development and the project, but since this is based on the environmental report, I have other questions. I initially came here out of interest from Fire in the Ring Boxing Gym, which is on Industrial Way. I boxed out of there. I was just wondering what the development out of that street and the commercial use of that street was going to develop into. But I'm also a vibration and noise consultant up the street, and some tests I was wondering for the noise report, do you guys have to consider the airport noise and the environmental noise impact from the trains, also the vibration impact? I noticed you guys are going to put some biological or biotech firms in there. If they're going to do any research in there, they should have to consider the impact from vibration if they have electron microscopes or some related research equipment. So just wondering if that could be included in the report, and environmental noise analysis, modeling and such. So, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident. I am a little bit concerned. I know that this is going to be a long process, but the process has already begun. And I was concerned when I read the agenda for tomorrow night's council meeting about the need to bring in 160,000 cubic yards of bay mud to accommodate the Silicon Valley water, whatever project they're doing, and the moving of 200,000 cubic yards from the east storage place to the west storage space. And I feel like there's a lot of issues that haven't been resolved yet about that. And I sort of just did some back of the napkin calculations, and the average 20-ton dump truck holds 14 cubic yards. So that would be a total of 25,714 dump truck loads to move the 360,000 cubic yards. But then you have to multiply that by 2 because there's an in one trip and then an out trip. And I don't see where we've really addressed the issues of the specific issues of how we're going to manage that, not only from noise, vibration, dust, traffic, wear and tear on the roadways and the inadequate roadways that already exist. And I'm really concerned about that. And that's on the agenda to be looked at tomorrow night. So how does that fit into this whole scheme of things? I mean, already we have issues with dust on the issues that are already going on, and it's very unhealthy, and I don't know how we're going to address this. And is this part of the notice of preparation for the specific plan? Because this is, an action that leads to the specific plan. So how does it all fit in? I mean, I feel like it hasn't been adequately addressed. And yeah, we're under a lot of pressure because the Silicon Valley, water, whatever sewer thing they need some place to take 160,000 cubic yards of dirt or bay mud. But are we really ready to take it? And how are we going to handle that? So that is a big concern of mine.
Thank you. And then Roland?
That's figure 4. Is that 6? This one, the big one. Is that it?
That's
Yeah,
it.
I guess that's it.
Yep.
That's it. So my name is Roland Dubrun. I'm from San Jose, and my comments are going to be pretty much the same as the comments I made 6 years ago, and it's got to do with transportation. And a lot of people don't realize how important Brisbane is going to be, not just to Caltrain, but for the entire region. And let me explain to you why. Nobody wants the High-Speed Rail Authority to put this massive maintenance yard there on the east side. And the only way that you can avoid that is to make sure that the new Trans-Bay Tunnel happens. Because when the new Trans-Bay Tunnel gets here, guess what? The maintenance yard is going to move to Auckland. And that's going to be the end of that discussion. Now, what you've got to understand is what's happening right now in San Francisco. They just put an RFP out. It's called the Pennsylvania Avenue Extension. Okay, and it took them 9 years to get to that alignment. I was there 9 years ago. But essentially, what's going to happen there is going to be the start of the tunneling for the Trans-Bay Tunnel. It's going to be just north of Cesar Chavez, around about 25th Avenue. You know where the old tunnel on the side there, there's not a lot happening to it. It's going to start there, and eventually that will finish up in the East Bay. My guess is going to be Emeryville, but what do I know? But when that happens, what you've got to understand is the amount of traffic that's going to be coming through the tube cannot possibly go down the peninsula. You're talking, it's going to be like BART. Once they got their signaling system sorted out, you're going to be talking about 30 trains an hour per direction. In the best case scenario, maybe 1/3 or half of these trains could go down the peninsula when it's grade separated. But you got to understand that at least half of these trains are going to have to turn around in Brisbane. And you need the infrastructure to do this. You need two things in Brisbane. First of all, you need a mega station there. It's going to have 2 outboard platforms. You're going to have a total of 6 tracks. There'll be 2 tracks on the outside for the trains that go back the other way. In the middle, there'll be whatever, high-speed rail, baby bullets, whatever, that go right through, and then trains actually stop. And that station is huge, but you don't want it to impact anything in the plan. You have to design that station in such a way as it just disappears, it's buried. So basically the tracks and all that stay at the level that they are now, but you're raising all the ground around it. And then you do whatever you want to do. You could, for instance, move the Baylands Park if you want to. I happen to think the Baylands Park is too close to Bayshore, but that's my own personal opinion. You could put buildings, you could put anything you want on top of it, but you got to plan for it and you got to design for it. You got to be aware of what's going to go down there and then design around it and then basically put it on top of it. Happy to show you. Is my time up here? I've got red light. No? Okay. How much time do I have left?
Can you wrap up and maybe?
Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to wrap up. So let me just close up. So I don't know how quickly this Baylands dirt, bay mud or whatever is going to get down here. And I also don't know how quickly this dirt is going to become from San Francisco. But the main advantage that you're going to have if the dirt comes from San Francisco is that you're not going to have to truck it. It's going to be showing up there right to the next, the Caltrain tracks, and actually the new tracks that will eventually go to Trans Bay. That's where the dirt is going to show up, and it's going to be coming right down here by rail, and you basically can start spreading it around. And I'll wrap it up, and I'll be a lot more elaborate in my written comments. Thank you.
So that's everyone we have who signed in. If anybody else would like to speak, it's your opportunity.
I would like to speak to the gentleman who just spoke. I believe that if what he says is true, this is going to be a fantastic opportunity for people to enrich their lives. Imagine living in a spot where you could get out of your room, take an elevator down, within a short walk, Caltrans, Muni, whatever you want, Uber, okay? This concept can save thousands of tons of carbon. Forget about all the solar stuff and all that stuff. This is the only way to make a global impact. And it allows people to live in a concentrated unit with easy access to ultimate transportation. San Francisco Airport, you can't live in a better place. Except I would hope that the environmental impact takes into account the winds in that area. The winds are kind of tough. So if something could be designed where all the infrastructure is downstairs and somehow the buildings shielded an open space from the winds, it could be a really fantastic place. It could be an amazing place, and the views would be astronomically beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Have you ever seen the sunrise over the eastern hills? They would see the sunset. They would see the migratory birds. It would be a fantastic place to live, and it would enrich many people's lives and make this town much more than it is, stronger and bigger. Thank you.
Before you go, can we get your name for the record?
Oh,
Do
sorry.
you have it?
Bill Detmer,
Okay.
longtime resident of Brisbane. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Want it on the table. Anyone else? Yeah, the question come up that Michelle that you had raised regarding the Bay Mud project, that will be one of the issues for discussion tomorrow night at council, whether the import of Bay Mud is a project that is subsequent to the general plan amendment or whether it's part of this. So that is an appropriate comment for tomorrow night's hearing. I think the other comment just to clarify, is on noise studies. What you will see in the environmental impact report are impacts of the project in creation of noise, because that's one of the changes that occurred in CEQA, is to eliminate impacts of the environment on the project. But staff has requested that we analyze in terms of noise effects on the uses within the project, but that's not literally part of a CEQA analysis under the new guidelines. And so if there's nothing else, thank you all for coming. Thank you.